Republican Party should make every American proud that this nation has been an efficient instrument in bringing happiness to a million people.
William Howard Taft, the 27th President of the United States, served from 1909 to 1913. He was the only man in history to serve first as President, then as the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. He was also the largest service president, standing 6 feet tall and weighing more than 300 pounds. But President Taft never really wanted the job and was unhappy in the White House. Therefore, many people felt he was ineffective and served only one term. Hi, I'm Sydney Maxwell at the William Howard Taft National Historic Site in Cincinnati, Ohio. President Taft was born here in Cincinnati on September 15, 1857. He was the second son of Alphonso Taft and his second wife, Louise Maria Torrey Taft. He grew up with 2 older half-brothers, 2 younger brothers, and a younger sister. The future president was a large, good-looking boy called Big Love because of his size. During summers, the Taft children visited their grandfather in Millbury, Massachusetts. To learn the value of money, he made them cut wood to pay for their vacations. When he was 13, Big Love entered Woodward High School in Cincinnati. At 17, he enrolled in Yale College, where he graduated second in his class in 1878. He then studied law at the Cincinnati Law School, received a law degree, and became a lawyer in 1880. By June 19, 1886, he had met and married Helen Nellie Herron, the intelligent and ambitious daughter of a law partner of President Rutherford B. Hayes. Together, the Tafts had 3 children, Robert, Helen, and Charles. Taft was content to simply practice law, but his family pushed him to pursue politics in the Republican Party. At his father's urging, Governor J.B. Foraker appointed Taft to a vacancy on the Cincinnati Superior Court in March 1887. The next year, voters elected him to a 5-year term to the court. Next, he was appointed Solicitor General of the United States by President Benjamin Harrison, who then appointed him a judge in the United States Court of Appeals. From 1896 to 1900, he served as Dean of the University of Cincinnati Law School. Then, in 1900, President William McKinley appointed him the chairman, and then the first civil governor of the Philippine Islands.
We are engaged in the Philippines in a great missionary work should make every American proud that this nation has been...
But when Secretary of War Eli Root resigned in February of 1904, President Theodore Roosevelt asked Taft to return to Washington to become his Secretary of War. Before long, Taft became Theodore Roosevelt's unofficial troubleshooter, supervising the construction of the Panama Canal, where he set up the government there.
The material prosperity and the progress of its inhabitants towards better conditions should make every American proud that this nation...
Taft and Roosevelt became so close that the president often boasted that, as long as Taft was sitting on the lid, everything in Washington was all right. But in 1908, President Roosevelt announced he would not seek re-election.
Theodore Roosevelt will not seek re-election because of a previous campaign promise not to succeed himself.
His first choice as his successor was William Howard Taft.
Roosevelt endorses his Secretary of War, William Howard Taft.
Taft would have rather had an appointment to the Supreme Court, but his wife and friends once again urged him to run for president.
He accepts his party's nomination to run against the Democrat, William Jennings Bryan.
Hail to our leader from 1908. Hail to our Billy, our glorious chief.
He won the Republican nomination and chose Representative James S. Sherman of New York as his vice president.
The Republican Party has pursued consistently the material prosperity, and the progress of its inhabitants towards better conditions in respect to comfort of living and education should make every American proud that this nation has been an efficient instrument in bringing happiness to a million people.
William Howard Taft overwhelmingly won the 1908 election and became America's 27th president.
Taft and Truman won the election of 1908 by more than 1 million votes.
The man of the earth, for Bill Taft is the man of the earth.
As he entered the White House, the new president had big shoes to fill. Theodore Roosevelt had been a popular president, but Taft knew he could not run the government the same way Roosevelt had. To protect American industries from foreign competition, he established the Tariff Board to tax foreign imports. He took the first steps toward establishing a federal budget by requiring his cabinet members to account for the money they spent. At his urging, Congress created the Postal Savings System in 1910 and Parcel Post in 1913. The Taft administration also enlarged the powers of the Interstate Commerce Commission and enacted a bill requiring federal campaign expenses be made public. In the area of foreign affairs, the president promoted what he called dollar diplomacy, using American tax dollars to encourage business to invest in foreign countries. He also ended America's occupation of Cuba and negotiated important treaties with the United Kingdom and France. But these policies proved to be unpopular, and most historians say his record in international affairs was undistinguished. In the Taft White House, Mrs. Taft was the real boss. She was an outspoken first lady and skillful hostess who enjoyed planning state functions and private parties alike. On summer evenings, the Tafts often sat on the south portico of the White House and listened to records. They were excellent dancers, and in spite of his large size, the president played tennis and golf and often rode horseback. Most people believe that Mrs. Taft was better suited for politics than her husband and controlled his staff better than he did. But she suffered a serious stroke in the winter of 1909, and once she became ill, the president seemed to lose interest in his job. By 1912, he was up for re-election, facing two well-known candidates who wanted his job. Former President Roosevelt, who had supported Taft as his successor, but now felt he was too conservative as president, announced his candidacy on the Progressive Party ticket. The Democrats nominated Governor Woodrow Wilson of New Jersey as their candidate. Taft faced inevitable defeat, and on Election Day received only 8 electoral votes, against 88 for Roosevelt and 435 for Woodrow Wilson. After leaving the White House in 1913, the former president became a law professor at Yale University and later held a series of prestigious jobs. But it wasn't until 1921, when President Warren G. Harding appointed him Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, that President Taft was given the job he had yearned for all his life. He served on the Supreme Court for 9 years, until heart trouble forced him to retire on February 3, 1930. William Howard Taft died on March 8, 1930, and today is buried in Arlington National Cemetery, along with the only other American president resting there, John F. Kennedy. In the end, America's 27th president believed his accomplishments on the nation's highest court were more important than his decisions as president. At heart, William H. Taft was a respected judge who had little taste for national politics.